Hello, this is Patrick, one of the wild guys. This is my YouTube intro. You've seen us in the past. We were doing rafting in rivers and lakes and even out in the Pacific Ocean a little bit in the Northwest Territory, the Yukon, and British Columbia. I now traded in the wild guys for my wife, and we went moose hunting for the past about 20 years, and we were very successful at it as well. So now you're going to start to see my wife in my intro along with myself. We didn't have to leave and go far from our home in Kelowna, and we're in beautiful scenery. We are very fortunate to live in British Columbia. This is certainly some of the nicest places in the world to view. We may not have been the best moose hunters, but we learned to be patient, and that was the most valuable thing that we had in acquiring a moose each year. The moose were in much better shape than us, so often we would just call them in to where we were at. The tree stand worked very effectively, and the moose didn't seem to even look up at us when we were there. I grew up in Smith, Alberta, and lived on these chicken you see here. But now that we're hunting moose, we just leave the chicken alone. There's an endless name for these wild chicken, so we just call them wild chicken or partridge or whatever. I believe this one is called a blue grouse. Some we even called fool hens. Some of the wild chicken had white meat, others had more dark. I believe that these ones here are called ruffed grouse. You'll find various different parts of the province and also across Canada. There seems to be hundreds of different names for all these different types of chicken. In northern Alberta, we called them spruce hens, or sometimes willow grouse, all kinds of different names. The porcupine you see here is good meat, but they're protected for people that are starving in the woods. This moose call you see in the picture here, we bought from a sporting goods store. Many times though, we just make a moose sound, and if they were going to be coming, you would soon see them. The yellow thing on the end of the moose call is a spout from a jerry can. In many cases, we didn't even use the tree stand, but a brush pile worked and was very effective. Over the years, we found that October 4th worked well for us for calling the moose. There's always seems to be an exception for every rule, and this one was an exception on 2018 where we got this moose on October the 7th. I think you could say this was a slow year for us. Not every year did we get our moose on October 4th, but that seemed to be the magical date that we often joked and laughed about, and it seemed to happen very often. And the first thing we would do is find out where the moose were at. No point calling moose if there's no moose there. After we'd find out the location that the moose are in, that's where we'd set up then and do our moose calling. Getting an immature moose is sometimes hard, and 3 in our camp got one this year, and we were one of them. I talked a wee bit about having patience as one of the virtues of moose hunting, and we would take often along with us a set of cards or whatever. We could spend a whole day in the same location, but if you go away and come back and find the moose is there, you'd be mighty disappointed. So we would put our time in and have patience and have something to do while we're there. There was times that we set up and started calling, and for one reason or another we lost patience and moved to another area, only to come back and see the moose standing there wondering, where did them funny sounding moose go to anyways? This is a perfect example of a moose that would try to call out in the morning, and we got impatient and we left and we went to another area. On our way back in the late afternoon, we looked in where we were calling the moose, and there he was, standing right where we were calling him in. So you gotta use patience. After getting out in the timber and the area that you're going to be hunting in, first set up your camp, and then after that, do some driving around and find out where you see any tracks or signs or where they've been feeding, and then you've got a place to go and set up the next day and start your hunt. Setting up a comfortable camp and having water and wood is very important. It's always good to have a good camp and one that you can be comfortable in. This is our hot water tank we call Burp. We always had hot water. Getting your hair washed with nice warm water. Water was even warm when you get up in the morning. It was great. And that's our little moose mobile in the back. And we had a lot of fun with that. So you don't have to spend a lot of money. You can enjoy things like that. The Cougar was more comfortable, but we never had as much fun and laughter as we did in the moose mobile. With the Cougar, we started off with a gas engine, and then later on we altered it and went to Duramax diesel. It worked really well. This was our upgrade to the Cougar that we used for the latter part of our years hunting in the woods. The Cougar was very comfortable and we quite enjoyed it. And we always had lots of wood for a campfire outside, and the birds would come in and we'd provide them some food to eat, but we had a good time and the camp was very comfortable. But we still got lots of laughs out of the moose mobile that we had before it. Many, many laughs. We still laugh about it. The beginning of October, when we went through the Caribou and up through Prince George, everybody watched for the moose mobile. We had a great time. But I guess we were going to have to head out. We sort of know where there are some moose now, and so we're going to head out, and we'll probably go up and do a tree stand or sit on a brush pile and start calling the moose and see what we were able to see. We know there's quite a few moose in this area, and a very high percentage of bulls. We see more bulls than we do cows. I find that quite different than other areas that we've hunted in. This moose sort of proves us wrong on a couple of things. First of all, it's not October the 4th, but it's the 6th, mind you. This was a cow, and we weren't shooting this one anyways. We were just watching him, and sometimes you'll have the cow there, and a bull will come out behind. But many times, especially in tree stands, when we were watching moose, some of the moose we got to know so that we would actually name them. We had one young calf moose, and we called him Wooly. He much like one of those 4-H cattle that you see taken to the fall fair, and the hair is all curly, and he was such a healthy little one that he wasn't that little neither, but he was great to watch him and his mother sitting there feeding right below us, and we were sitting and drinking hot apple cider and having a chat. And they just weren't bothered at all by us. But if a pickup drove by, even if it would be a kilometer away, they would be very tense, and sometimes it wouldn't be very long, and they would be moving into the timber where they couldn't be seen. When the people got there, they wondered why it was such a coincidence the moose left just before they got there. It was because they heard them coming in. We're back up in the tree again and doing some more moose calling, and watching for moose to come in, and seems like they're coming in. We just got to get the right ones is all. This is a young bull, but we didn't take this here animal. We let him go. The first thing is how's that? On our hunting trip, we always tried to have lots of fun. My wife and I made 2 moose calls, and I never seen so many moose respond to it and run all around us. We didn't have a mature hunt draw, so we could only go for immatures. These were not immatures, but they were mature bulls, so we let them go. It's good to know what approximate area you feel a moose will be coming out of, and you can get the wind on your side. If you do, the moose will know exactly where you're at. They'll come right for you. Biggest thing is before you start calling is to get in the location that you should be in, because it's the smell will give you away right away. This was an afternoon, and we started doing calling, and we were just shocked by the number of moose that were coming out. We had some of them circling right around us, even after talking about the importance of having being downwind. These moose, they were very aggressive. They come right up to us. Some of them we had to we had to take and cut them out of the video because they come up so close to you that pretty soon your camera for some reason was shaking, and they weren't moose that we could shoot. They were some that made a complete circle bigger than around us, immature, and left. So we had to let them go. But boy, did we see a lot of moose. So we know we had at least four moose right in that afternoon. And some were still in the timber, but we had four that come out right towards us. If we were to count the ones that we seen moving in the timber that were darker, as you can see in the background, I'm not sure how many moose. There would be a lot of moose that we had just from that one afternoon call. So I've never ever had that many moose actually come in from a call, but these ones, they certainly were very aggressive that night. I don't know for sure if that was the fourth, but it would be it'd be right around that time frame that of October. So when you're calling and they're aggressive, they're coming. You'll see this one is not far away from us, and he comes right in, not afraid, and he'll go right around us. We stayed there and we watched the moose for some time as they were aggressively running around us. And we had to leave because it became illegal to shoot. And at the same time, we didn't shoot one shot. We let them all go. None of them were legal for us. This was a hunt we will never forget. You'll see here that this moose had 5 on this side. I don't know what he had on the other side, but they had even a little bit of a paddle, so he was totally illegal, and we had to let him go along with all the other ones that were out there that evening. One year that we were there, we seen 17 moose before we were able to shoot one, and we were fortunate to get our moose that year, but it's sometimes harder to find the immature. But if you stick with it, the immature will come out after you as well. So you just gotta be patient and wait, and when you do get an opportunity, you got to take advantage of it. There will be times you'll be calling and calling and calling, and you won't get anything that comes out. It probably just the moose aren't prepared to come at that particular time for one reason or another, and so they don't come out. Or maybe they just aren't there. You're in the wrong spot. Then there will be other times when you wonder what happened. They're coming out of the bush at you all different directions. So you got to be prepared for both. And when they're not coming in certain times, definitely, as we said before many times, patience seems to be the strongest thing that we had in getting our moose. So find the right spot, do your calling, and you wait. Because if there are moose there, and it's the right time, like around October 4th, I always used to say. Not necessarily, but they will come out then, and you'll get your opportunity. Calling moose and hearing them come, sometimes you'll hear them from a distance. No, sometimes they call back, other times you just hear them crashing through the bush. Is quite rewarding and satisfying, much better than just going out and spotting them on the road or whatever. Don't expect when you call them to hear them all the time. Probably the majority of the time, the moose will sneak in and be sitting there looking at you before you even know that they're there. And not only are they just mature bulls, but we got immature bulls, and we even had cows come in and sitting in the bush watching us. Another thing that you should be trying to do, and it's going to be hard to explain, but sort of training your eye to spot the moose and then communicate with your brain that, hey, that's a moose. Because lots of times there are people that have moose right near them, right out in the open, and yeah, they can't see them. Others are just amazing at how they can spot the moose, and my wife is really good at that. She's able to spot moose even much better than I can. So when you're out hunting, and whether you're stationary or you're moving, you always want to think about the color of the moose, and also to the profile of the moose, and be aware of that so that when you do see those profiles or colors, you will recognize them right away. And otherwise, you can have them go right by you, or you'll go by them and you'll never see them. When you're looking for the signs of the moose, you've got to go very slow and look for all the signs. Otherwise, especially on hard, gravelly ground, it's going to be hard to see those signs. So keep an eye out, not only for his tracks, but also to what they're feeding on and what area they're coming from. Make sure that you're also thinking about getting the moose to your vehicle, butchered and loaded without doing any damage to the meat or to yourself, because they're a very heavy animal and they're very hard sometimes to get them to where you can put on your vehicle and take them home. It may be tempting to go into some wet area around beaver dams and that, where the moose tend to be in the early part of the hunting season. But I've sort of always looked at finding a place where we can call them out so they're very close and they're easy to have them gutted and butchered. We always had a long airplane cable with us, and we would take and hook them together, and you were able to go out and hook onto your moose and pull them in to where you could deal with them and get them loaded. For many years, we would also put like a hackamore on their head, and we would pull them with the hair so that they would slide along a lot easier. We thought we had the answer. It seemed to work for us, although we had some difficulties with them getting tangled in the bush. But one year, we had to take a moose out against the hair. Guess what? We found out it comes out so much better. The head, the horns don't get tangled in the bush, and we don't have the same problem with the legs as well. They just seem to stretch right out and roll out much better. So the last 5 years or so, if we have to pull one, we pull it from the feet first, and we pull it against the hair, and boy, it comes out so much slicker. Years ago, we used to build tree stands that we were able to call moose into. Since then, we've changed. We've found that we had what's called a buddy tree stand. It was so easy to take with you and put up in the tree, and it seemed fairly safe as well. And if you were in an area that you weren't getting any response for moose, it was able to take down easily and take it to another area. And then you don't have to worry about taking all your lumber down out of the tree and put nature back to the way it was. In an area we call Bear Creek, Maine, it's always nice to watch the bluebirds. I don't know why, but there seem to be a lot of bluebirds in that particular area. Getting your moose is not the only thing that you should be interested in, but making sure that you're able to look after the moose as well, so you've got really good meat. We always look to go moose hunting, and we used to hunt elk and deer and animals like that. We only hunt moose anymore. We love the moose meat, and it's very important to have it looked after properly. You'll notice we brought this moose in whole, and we butchered it out, and we did a lot this way. We're finding it more difficult now as we're getting older. If the weather is good and it's dry, we generally try to hang our moose, but you got to be careful not to hang it too many days, because the grizzlies will smell it and they come in. They're interested too. As we get older, there'll probably be less moose videos as well, because it's getting harder to look after them between the two of us. We had a grizzly come in while we had a moose cut in half and hanging in a tree, and actually pulled the head off it. It was just on the one side, so it was easy to do. You might wonder, where are we hunting? Or you might even recognize some of the places that we've been hunting. But we've hunted basically in many areas across British Columbia, and we found them all very, very enjoyable to hunt in. My wife and I used to cruise in many different parts of the world, but I got to tell you that the thing that I always look forward to was our hunting trip right here in British Columbia, and having our moose mobile or our trailer and being out there for about 10 days. That was the most enjoyable trip that we had. We've been on about 12 cruises in different parts of the world. We used our Cougar and we traveled across Canada to the east, then back through the States to the west and home. We've also did a lot of extensive traveling through Alaska, Northwest Territories, Yukon, and northern Canada. But the 10 days of hunting in October were better than them all, as I have hunted most of my life and did a little bit of trapping. If you add 25 years to these videos, you realize that we're not that wild anymore, and also we're not as mobile as we were before. But the canoe videos will come to an end, as us wild guys are getting older and portaging and canoeing long distances is just getting too hard for us now. I refer to it as a once-in-a-lifetime trip. So that's why that we're making a switch and covering some of the moose hunting and some of the things we did to make this lifestyle possible. Our tree stands were a blast. We watched more moose there than we ever would have thought we could. If you see a carving like this anywhere in British Columbia, it's probably a good place. We put our signature there. But you're going to have to look about 20 feet up the tree, because that's where it's at. After a few years of tree stands, we left them home and we used the natural brush piles, and we made a little hole in them and where it was comfortable and waited for the moose. I built this moose caboose back in 1999. It served us well. My friend Bob was a sign painter. He did the sign painting on the moose mobile for us. Make sure you keep your meat hung and the cover over it so there's no rain or wet moisture on it and the flies off it. The meat is really important. We'll talk a lot about how to look after your meat after you get it home as well. We brought the moose in whole with the hide on to keep it clean, and also too we got the hide off the same day to cool it down properly. Some will be asking, how did you get the moose to the back of the truck, and then how did you get it loaded? We had a very long cable, so the trick was to try and call it in long enough so you could catch it with your cable. Then we had a 3/4 sheet of plywood that laid at the bottom of our pickup box. We used it as a ramp and used a come-along to pull it in. This year in 2022, sat on top of a brush pile and called the moose in. He stopped on the road right behind the truck. The head and the horns were always tangled up in brush and trees, so we hooked the rope to the back legs and let the head dangle along behind us, and we pulled it against the grain of the hair. It took me 40 years, but I finally figured it out. Otherwise, it's trying to push a piece of rope. It just doesn't go very well. It's better to pull it. The same principle applies to a moose. This is our hot water tank, and it's a stainless steel beer keg. All you need to do is drill a hole in it, add another pipe or a hose and a pipe that coils down into the fire, and a few fittings, and you're good to go. 24 hours a day you got hot water. After a long day of hunting, we could come home and just concentrate on ourselves and getting ourselves the food and the rest that we needed. Be prepared for another day. Not only that, but also the entertainment that we would have with each other and the birds and the animals that might be around us. And a clean camp will also help to keep the animals away that could do damage to yourself or to the camp. I believe there's probably lots of boulder roads, but I think this is the one where we sat up on a big rock and we made a couple calls, and immature come running out of the bush into the logged off area we were at and came running right at us. The moose that you're going to see next is considered a mature moose, and we got this one a little bit further up north. This one here is a mature moose that we had an LEH, or limited entry draw, that we were able to get. Looks like my wife got them tied up, so we should be able to get them. There were some areas that we seen deer in, but as for hunting deer, we never hunted deer together at all. We pretty well got spoilt, and we were only taking out moose. So we're gonna quit showing the deer and get back to our moose. Make sure we got one in our freezer for this year. Looks good here. This must have been when we tried to pull the moose out by the head, by the looks of what we see here. See the rope there. Oh well, we eventually learned. Try a different direction. Looks like this was a year that was Plan B involved. We had the moose cut up. I said we seen mostly bull moose, but I just want to show you that we also seen some cow moose. There was only a few years that we actually had a cow draw. Pretty well we always put in for a bull. Oops, we run into another deer. Oh, and it looks like a cow and a calf we were able to get. My wife loved her 30-30 and really enjoyed using it. Her 30-30 had open sights, but boy, she was pretty good at her shot. I gotta say, there's another animal that we didn't eat. We just left him in the woods. That was the rabbit. He looked pretty hoppy out there. When you hunt together over 20 years and many friends is out there and new acquaintances, sometimes it's hard to remember exactly which moose come from where. But anyways, we certainly had an opportunity to get a number of moose, and we had a great time. These are some visitors that's camped right alongside us. They had a moose that walked right through their camp. You will meet a lot of different people when you're out in the wilderness hunting. A lot of people spend their time out there, and they also look to get good, clean, organic meat. And they're good people and good friends that we met out in the woods, not just animals. This is how most of the moose come into our meat pole. With hide was on. This one now the hide is off. We take it off fairly quickly after we get it in and hanging on the pole. I won't forget this moose. I was with my son-in-law and I had to draw for a mature bull. And I didn't sight my gun in because I thought, oh no, it's nothing wrong with that. Well, guess what? I did shoot the moose and I did get it, but not exactly where I wanted the bullet to go. So I learned to make sure my gun is sighted in well before actually the hunt. When you get out of the urban areas and out into the countries and the farmlands and the forests, you're going to start to see other animals other than domestic animals like dogs and cats. So you're going to see a lot of the wild animals. We had a couple of coyotes here that were curious about something they found in the field. One is run off, the other one is sticking around. He's anxious to see something. I think I can see it just ahead of him. I'll just have to take a look and see what it is that he's interested in, I guess. There he is. Oh, looks like a hide-off, something. So, but he's a little bit nervous. He can see out across the field and the fence and see us on the road, and he doesn't like the fact that we're watching him. Well, we're not going to stay too long. We'll just take a little bit of video of the coyote and what he's up to. Sort of, he's curious about us, and I guess you could say that we're kind of curious about him as well. And I just wanted to thank you for coming along with our hunt. I spread it out over, we had a lot of material, but I spread it out over about a 20-year period. And we're going to move along with not only the ones that we did with our canoeing and rafting, but also too we're going to show you some of the lifestyle changes that we made so that we were able to spend time out in the woods. And some of the most precious things that we have is certainly our environment and also too our wild animals and the preservation of them. Next, we'll cover a lot of the lifestyle changes that we are making in order that we can continue, especially in the northern part of Canada, being able to enjoy the beauty that we have and the nature we have there so that we can share them with you. We got some plans for the future and we hope to have you in with them. But first of all, follow us as we make our lifestyle change. Watch for the wild guys and you'll be surprised that we're planning on going to the far north. In the 20-some years
And
that
so I'm
my
saying,
wife and I were
look after
hunting,
your meat,
we
prepare
took
it well,
numerous
you'll be
pictures,
happy for
but
it.
we didn't take that many videos. So we're not going to spend a great deal of time.
Hello there. We're just going to show you some of our moose meat, and we talked a lot about how to butcher your meat, how to get your meat out of the bush. We actually did a lot of calling, and we had the moose come out himself. We found that was a lot better than trying to drag him out of the bush, and in the end, that was what we did. Not always were we successful. Sometimes we had to pull them out of the woods. But we would then butcher and gut the animal, and we would leave the hide on and bring him out. And the same day, we would be taking off the hide so it would cool properly. We would hang him up whole, and then after we did that, we would take and have his nose about that far off the ground, and we would hang him there, and you would watch each day, and the nose would get down closer and closer and closer till his nose was right on the ground and his neck was starting to bend. You knew that his meat was stretched out good. He was going to be a lean animal, and it was going to be a tender animal because his meat was stretched out well. Then we would take him to the butcher market, and we would have him cut up for us. And these here, the best you'll ever get is ground moose. It's far better than ground beef. And I know it's got beef on here, but that's because of the meat market, but this is ground moose. And these are the hamburgers my wife has made, and we keep in the freezer. The only thing you will have in them is spice. That's the only thing you ever want to add to a moose. A lot of people say, what do you put mixed with it? Do you put some fat or something in it? In my opinion, the last thing you want to do is put fat in the moose. Fat doesn't keep very well, and once you put it into the moose, well, that's going to affect the moose as well. So just put moose in there. That's the best thing to do. And we found that when we made the hamburgers like this, if you cook these, they're going to stay the same size when you cook them, and they're going to taste a lot better than the stuff you buy from the store. The other thing that we do is we have quite a few moose roasts, and the moose roast is some of the best meat you can have. Now, I'm not going to say that you should have lots of moose steaks. Moose, or should say steaks, normally have marbling in them, and if you want to get a ribeye or something like that, it tastes better than I would say that the moose would. So we have a few steaks, but we primarily do stew meat, and we do roast, and we do the moose burgers and ground moose, and that's what we use for that. You're not going to find any chemicals in this. There's chemicals in a lot of the food that's being fed to the animals. This is going to be good for you. You're going to have a great moose trip, and every time you sit down to have a dinner and you have moose meat, you're going to think about your trip and the great moose, and also looking after the meat, and it will be very, very healthy for you. So as far as the looking after your meat, make sure you look after it properly, take it home, and have it set in a freezer for you, so you can go to it and take meat out, and you'll have meat all year and into the next year. Moose, you don't have a time schedule on it, or whatever you call that, where you look at the back and it's a best before date. You can have her for a couple of years and she's still best.
You'll notice that from the background that you see here, that our life has changed. The home that we had before that you see in the early days is no longer there, and we are in a high-rise condo along the lake. It frees us up for A, traveling, and B, for traveling especially throughout the north. We still want to spend a great deal of time. There's so much that we have to do. Now that also the Northwest Passage is open, that will be on our bucket list, and hopefully we can get there. Would like to also say that you've noticed in our hunting video, we have many, many pictures, but most of them are not in the movie form. so we probably won't be using those. But what we want to do is to focus on the fact of the animals, the nature, the environment that's around us, and also to the caring for the meat that we've got. It was certainly great food for us over the years. The plan is for us to make some adjustments. We have two LEHs, or limited entry draws, for moose again this fall. I know it's getting silly, we're getting pretty old, but we're planning on continuing to do that for a while yet. And we also have plans in the far north to spend some time there as well, so we can do some videoing of the things that we have in the far north that we yet have not seen yet. Is a big area to cover. So I want to thank you for being part of this, and we still have a lot of plans with doing more videos, so keep an eye out for the wild guys, because they're going to be a lot more, even though we might not be quite as wild anymore.